Association in going to start over again. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 2020 review of the Trends Impacting Community Association Insurance. I'm Marketing Manager Sherry Branson, and I'd like to wish everybody a happy Groundhog Day. I guess there's 6 weeks more of winter, and I'm now joined by Kevin Davis, the president of Kevin Davis Insurance, and Kevin joins me from Los Angeles. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Is it still raining out there, Kevin, or do you have nice sunny weather?
What? It's finally dry, and I don't care if 6 more weeks left of winter because it's been 67 degrees out here, sunny, so it's pretty good. So,
nice weather.
No problem for me.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, everybody, we're getting all kinds of weather all over the country. It's hot and sunny here in Florida, and other parts are really cold. So,
yeah, Texas. Yeah, well, I guess we should. Texas right now having, especially Dallas, having difficult times right now. So,
yeah, it's 11 degrees yesterday in Dallas. I mean, just really, really cold. And yeah, we're thinking of everybody there. Hope you're safe with the ice storm and the losing the power and all that kind of that situation, which is a dangerous situation. We're thinking of everybody and hoping you're staying safe.
Yeah.
And Kevin, this is can you believe it? Our first webinar of 2023. Here we are. It's a new year.
23, another year of doing webinars. And I tell you, I don't get tired of doing these things. They are fun for me, and I like updating myself. Whenever we do whatever topic we talk about, we want to kind of go, okay, what's new, what's different about it, so we can add something different than we did a year ago. So this is pretty cool. I enjoy it.
Yeah, they're very exciting. A new year, new webinars. We're going to talk about a lot of interesting topics that we saw happening in 2022 that are affecting the industry now. And I did want to mention that we record all of our webinars and put them on our website, which is kdisonline.com. So you can listen to all of our past webinars and then this webinar again if you'd like. And if you have any questions at the end of today's webinar, feel free to type your questions into the questions box. And if we have time, we'll do a little Q&A at the end. If you think of any other questions afterwards or want a copy of today's PowerPoint presentation, please send me an email to sherry.branson@amwins.com. That's sherry.branson@amwins.com. Please take a second to read this disclaimer. And now we're going to talk about our goal today, Kevin. What exactly is our goal? What do we hope to accomplish?
Well, what I did was look at the top issues of 2022. We look at all our webinars, listen to all different conversations, and just when I was out traveling, talking to the property managers and board members, what's happening out there? And then put them together and say, okay, this is what we had for last year and how this impacts us in the coming year. So that's kind of what our goal is. And it's going to be interesting, but they wasn't all bad. We didn't have a lot of bad things. So it'll be kind of good.
Yeah, when you look at where we were a year ago compared to today, I think we're in much better shape. I mean, there were a lot of things in 2022 that happened that weren't good, but I think we came out of it and learned a lot, basically in the end. And I know we're going to talk about 3 different, the trends you talked about, you mentioned. What are the different categories?
This is going to be interesting. In fact, as I said, just a second now, the trends are going to be interesting. I call them the good, the bad, and the ugly, from my favorite movies. And so we talk about trends, and that's the, it's kind of funny, but it's kind of reality because it's like there's some good things that happen, there's some bad things, and there's some stuff that, oh man, it's some tough. So we're going to look at it that way. And again, this is really an overview of what happened in the past year, and let's kind of go with it. If you have any questions, let's put them in the chat. We're glad to talk about them. So the first one, this is so we'll start with the good. Okay. The first good is COVID is officially done. Okay. It's over, for the past couple of years now, since 2020, right? It is closed, no more. We don't worry about gyms anymore, reopening the gyms, all that stuff,
all the mask mandates and, everything being shut down, reopening and closing. It seems like that's all behind us right now.
Yes, it is. Remember, you had to mandate COVID tests and the use of facilities, and the banning of guests and everything like that. Yes. So that's the good news. We don't have to worry about that. However, okay, there's certain things that are I call them unintended consequences from COVID. Okay. And I would say the first one is we have like claims, unique kind of claims that we haven't seen. Like, for example, because we're home a lot more, we're starting to see more GL type claims. You know, we're starting to see claims like the liability claims that we always saw, but because they're home, we're seeing more people running into each other. You know, people on bicycles, running into trucks, because you used to having lots of trucks coming in, but now you have just people there. So we see a lot more liability claims. Fire claims are happening more. Claims from fire. We saw people are smoking during the day and then throwing their cigarettes out and creating fires. People are cooking a lot more in there. So, so this whole thing working from home seems to be one of the unintended consequences of COVID that we have to learn about this new normal. So there's a new normal from COVID. Okay, COVID is done. Bam, that's done. But we have a new normal, which is called, I call it working from home. Yeah. So we're seeing claims. And also, too, it's another area I said that there's like limited resources now, because we're all fighting over the resources. Because again, if we're home, you know, I want to use the pool, I want to use the gym, I want to use, you know, the facilities. It's hard because again, we're got to share. So,
yeah. And I think another thing that's come out of it is board members, you know, they had much more, they had incredible responsibility and stress during COVID, you know, regarding making decisions, opening and closing the pool or the fitness center. So they learned a lot from that.
Yes, yes. It's interesting how, again, we talk about the good news. The good news is that the education is there. Another area is there's rising costs associated with working from home too, you know? Just think, for example, of, you know, water amount that they use, that they can use, and different things that they haven't done in the past that they have to do. I mean, just to air condition and to heat the gym. It's a lot of things happening, especially now with inflation. Inflation is there. So right now, the good news is that, again, the concerns we had for COVID are gone, but working from home is there, and we have to get used to working from home, knowing that there's going to be liability working from home, there'll be gyms issues, and there's rising costs, but we're pretty good. So.
So some positives came out of it. You know, it was a really tough year in that sense, but now they've learned a lot, they've educated themselves, and I think they can, basically after handling COVID, I think board members or associations can handle, you know, just about anything. I mean, that was a really incredible 2 years, incredible time.
Well, guess what? The next one's even more so, okay? Number 2, this is another good thing. The Champaign Tower certified collapse. Okay, that's again, it's behind us now. You know, it's one of those things that really created a lot of stress in a lot of people's lives, especially from an insurance point of view, because there's so much stuff going on in that thing. I mean, just think that was a year and a half ago. It was in June, right? 2020, 2021. You had this building that came down, okay? 100 people died, okay? Never happened in the history of condominiums, community associations, you know? And all of a sudden, the world changed. Our industry changed overnight. We look at what happened. We look at all the people that were sued in that thing. You know, you had the condo owners, the past board members, the current board members, the management company, the people, the original building plans, contractors, construction crew, engineer. I mean, everybody was sued in this thing. And we started looking at the fact that, is it possible for other buildings to come down? Do we need to relook at how we are running these businesses and managing these businesses? Is having volunteer board members a way to go? Should we have paid board members? There was a lot going on with the because of this building coming down.
Mm-hmm.
However, it seems to be calming down. Just like with COVID, the Champagne Towers, Surfside, there seems to be a calming effect right now where there are some things to be concerned about, okay? But in terms of, big buildings coming down and loss of life, so I would say if there's a good news or if there's an awareness out there right now, there's awareness that this thing is possible. So because it's possible, and you just mentioned it in terms of education, that the board members are more aware now of what's possible than ever before. And so this awareness is really, truly important.
And when it comes to deferred maintenance, you and I were discussing before the webinar today, I guess they did have money set aside for the repairs that were needed, but they didn't have enough money set aside. There wasn't enough there. And they kind of procrastinated in getting the necessary repairs done. And I don't think that would happen again. I would hope it would not happen again.
Well, that's a really important thing to talk about right now, because when we talk about deferred maintenance, that's the thing that we learned more than anything else about this building coming down, that there is an abundance out there of buildings that have balcony issues, roof issues, windows issues that we're concerned about, just structural engineering things that we never thought about before. But again, now we are taking the time and looking at it. And interesting enough, Florida passed a law saying that you have to have your building, I think it's over a certain number of stories, you have to have a structural engineer to come in and take a look at it, just to make sure you don't end up. So there's an awareness of what can happen because of what happened. And because of that awareness, deferred maintenance, the one issue that's been the biggest problem historically in community association is that they don't reserve properly. They never reserve properly. They don't budget properly. So as a result, when you do have maintenance issues, you just ignore them or you kick the can down the road. Now, all of a sudden, because this building going down, deferred maintenance should not be the problem it once was. Now, one more thing that you just mentioned earlier that I think is going to be really, really make a big difference is the reserve study. I mean, historically, reserve study has been out there for years and years and years. Certain states require them to have a reserve study. But again, because of this building, that Surfside collapse, people are now more aware of the importance of the reserve study. Extremely important.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the board members that we talked about earlier, they have responsibilities. They had a lot on their shoulders with COVID, and they also face liability when a building collapses. If they had decided to, like you said, kick the can down the road and not do the maintenance or the necessary repairs that needed to be done, they are liable. If they made that decision to put it off for a couple years or a year later, etc. So I think the seriousness of it, of maintaining the property and keeping it safe, really came to the forefront with this situation with Surfside.
And that's what brings us to where we're at right now. This is probably the biggest good news, best good news that I've seen, is that the volunteer board members are finally understanding their responsibility. And now, where years and years we had unskilled board members looking at being on the board as a hobby or not understanding that it is a business, guess what? They are now aware that it's a business and they're doing things a lot better than they've done over the past several years.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're right. I think they look at it as a business and they take it seriously, and it's not just a hobby or something, a social club. I think they realize there's a lot more to it.
And again, I will give, it has to be from COVID, where they had to sit and actually make decisions about people's lives, about cleaning things, not cleaning things, getting people in. And so once you do that, and then once this building went down, we see more and more board members are attending, trade associations that represent community association. They have really, truly, truly starting to understand the responsibility. However, again, this is the tricky part of it, is that we're living in a world that's gotten a little more complicated. And as a result, even though these board members are more skilled, they have to have more different type of skill now. They have to have that skill that they're able to interact more with the people who live in their community. Because we happen to live in a 50-50 world where no matter what decision I make as a board member, half the people are not going to like it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
that's it. Yeah.
Whichever way you go. Yeah. There's always going to be.
Not like it. Half people are going to disagree with whatever I do. So if I have my Black Lives Matter hat on, I'm gonna get people who have MAGA hats upset with me. I have a MAGA hat on, and people. So we're living in that world, and right now that seems to be the big issue for community associations. Again, we had signs problems for years. I mean, for the past year, ever since people put signs out and says, "I believe in this" and "I believe in that." Well, we have to tell them that signs are not allowed. But they don't want to hear this thing. And one thing we're worried about right now is harassment and bullying. Those two things are starting to become a big problem for community associations now. The bullying and harassing of people. Because again, we live in a 50-50 society where half the group doesn't like that. We may live in a community association where all might be the same, but that's kind of rare. Even if 75% of them are the same, you're going to have that group that are not. And that's where the problem comes in today with the skilled volunteer board members. They need to understand that things like harassment, like bullying is, in violation of HUD. And so you have to do something about it. You cannot, if you know there's bullying, you have to do something about the bullying. You cannot ignore it. One piece of advice, two pieces of advice, okay? Number one, if you have rules, enforce them and enforce them uniformly. Everybody has to be operated under the same set of rules. We live in a 50-50. So if they start complaining because you discriminated against them because you told the person's car away, they told the person's car away, you told everybody's car away, and you do it uniformly, you're in good shape. Another thing is make sure you have an anti-harassment and discrimination policy. Have to have an anti-harassment and discrimination policy because right now we live in a 50-50 world. So somebody's going to claim, go after that board and say, you discriminated against me, you bullied me, and the first thing they're going to ask, let me see your anti-harassment discrimination policy. You say, no, I don't have one. Guess what happened to your liability? It increased.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, there's things that that board members may not realize is a violation of federal law or state law, for that matter. If they're not aware of the laws and what they have to protect the residents against, it's good to have a good legal counsel or a good resource to go to find out what are the laws, and are we following the laws? What are we doing the proper thing, handling this correctly, that kind of a thing.
Yeah. So those are good things. Those are good things. And again, those are good things. And I'm glad they are. So now let's go to the bad things. Okay.
Okay.
You ready?
Ready. Yes.
Bad. One word, 2 words, one thing. Bad. Social inflation. That is, I mean, we've been talking about this for a couple of years now. And it is a nightmare for reliability. I don't care if you're talking about D&O, GL, auto, whatever it is, it is. Social inflation is, again, we know what inflation is right now because we've been experiencing. If you go buy eggs right now, you see, wow, how come eggs cost so much money? Or the gas, whatever it is,
Price of gas and everything has gone up, basically. Everything is very high. Can you explain what social inflation is, Kevin, for people who might be joining us for the first time?
Social inflation is that there used to be a certain cost when there was a claim. You have a liability claim, you go to court, judgment, $10,000. Well, with inflation, that $10,000 went to $15,000, $20,000. Now, social inflation, a $10,000 claim is like $60,000 or $70,000. A $100,000 claim is now $1 to $2 million. So where we used to be able to predict the amount of money it would cost to settle a claim, we cannot predict that anymore at all. It's social inflation because now the verdicts are extremely high based on social reasons. What I mean, social reasons is that the people who are on these juries now, okay, And a lot of them are millennials. And I think it's millennials that have 2 children are millennials. But what they're doing is they don't have that trust in corporations. They look at corporations and they want to find them guilty, and so, and not just millennials, but a lot of people now. There's a social justice, there's an environmental, there's a climate change, all those things we've been hearing about. If those things are being dragged into court for any reason, anybody's treated improperly, the people who are in the jury are looking at them and saying, this is what we want to give this person more than we ever thought was possible for them. It is really, really, it's a problem we've talked about for a while, and it's getting worse to the point where we can't even, it's hard for us to even budget for it. When I'm looking at these claims that come through, how much it will take to settle a claim like this. And what happens is that the lawyers, what they do is ask for your D&O policy, your GL policy, and umbrella policy. If you see you have an umbrella policy and a $25 million limit on there, they're going to ask for $25 million in judgment. And they will say, we expect the $25 million in judgment. We believe the board of directors was incompetent, they were negligent, and we believe because this person was hurt, damaged, injured, whatever it is, they deserve the maximum amount. And that maximum amount is happening more and more and more, which is why you're having all these problems with getting an umbrella policy. Umbrella policy is very difficult because of social inflation. A $5 million umbrella policy will go in. I mean, it's not even enough limit for you. 25 million is not enough. However, is that we know that we give you a $25 million limit. Guess what? The lawyer will go and says, I demand $25 million. This is the problem today.
So the verdict, everything's getting bigger and bigger. The claims are getting larger, and it's just everything has gone up. The cost at the homeowners association, to run the association, et cetera, electricity, and now you've got the claims going higher. So that's why insurance is so important. The higher, the
one more
more
thing about
protection
this,
you have.
one more thing about the social inflation is really interesting. Another thing is that I just found myself. There's something called third-party litigation funding. Okay, so if all of a sudden I'm aware of a board that was hit by a car because they didn't put the tree because the stop sign wasn't to the adequate height, it was a violation. Okay, now all of a sudden I know I can make $25 million. I can go out and get a financial stake. I can go out there and get investors and say invest in this claim so we can make money together. So it's called third-party litigation funding.
Third-party litigation, is that what you said, Kevin? Third-party
litigation funding.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It helps to pay the legal expense until that big judgment comes down the road. Because that's investing a lot of time and energy into a case, and it's expensive for them to do it. So they go out and get funding for it. Social inflation is a problem. It's a big problem that is getting worse and worse, and not better, not settling down along. Lord, first of all, the number one, when COVID came out in 2020, so people went back to school and people got their degrees, and most of them got law degrees. So there's more lawyers now today than there ever were before.
And more lawsuits than ever before. So it goes hand in hand. More lawyers, more lawsuits, basically.
More advertising. I mean,
yes.
Ads I see on television and on billboards, Yeah,
it's nonstop.
It's nonstop. So when I talk about the bad, okay, it's not, the good things that happen are great, but this one bad thing, social inflation, has made it and will make it really difficult in the future for liability carriers, because we don't know how much we can charge for the premium, how much we can get for it, how much we need to get for it, which brings the ugly part of the whole thing. Here comes the ugly. Yes. This is the ugly. Nobody was talking about this thing. This is the ugly part, guys. And it's ugly because of social inflation. Okay, this is why it's ugly. We don't know any liability carrier, umbrella, D&O, any liability. We don't know what an adequate rate is today, because every time we look at year end, we look at how much money we spent. There's a lot more than we thought we would spend in these claims. The judgments, the settlements are off the chart. You know, we've had more $1 million claims in the past 3 or 4 years than we've ever had in our own program. And we know our competitors have $1 million claims, because if we're getting them, our competitors get them. We know there are more umbrella claims than we've ever seen before. All that has to do with social inflation on the liability side. So expect rates to continue to increase. You know, people may be saying that rates may have leveled off, and they may have leveled off, but they're not going to level off too much, because once we go into and see the claims we've seen in 2022, and I've been looking at them, we still not getting adequate rates at all.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball, to see how large the claims are going to get. So you can't really say the rates are going to stay the same or not, or level off for a long time. You just don't know.
And
if there's more and more $1 million claims, well, they're going to go up.
And there's capacity now. So what happened is that historically there's a lot of capacity out there. So if I get, if my rates are high, our competitors are, but what happens, capacity is shrinking. So there's less people are insuring than they were in the past. So because of less, so the rates going up, and what happens is, which reduces the limits. So all of a sudden, if there's less capacity, there's less limits out there. We're getting a lot of requests to do $5 million limits, because there's not enough umbrella carriers out there to do it. So what we're saying is that we're not comfortable putting out $5 million, especially with social inflation out there. So the limits are an issue, rates are an issue, and then coverage is next. Now, we haven't heard anything about restricted coverage. The only area that we are hearing about is one area, and that is getting a reserve study. People are going to start asking questions about the reserve study. Have you gotten one? Are you funding one? And are you spending one? Because it's one thing to get a reserve study. The second thing is to actually use a reserve study for the special assessment. And then to get a special assessment and then spend the money. So you have to be able to do those things. So coverage will be restricted probably in the future if you don't have a reserve study. You don't have a reserve study, or you're not in compliance with certain state laws that says you have to have a reserve study, or you have to have a structural engineer survey. So I see coverage restricted in those areas right there. But right now, I see more and more of trying to figure out what the right rate is to get to a point where we can feel that we can be around 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. One trend I did want to mention that I went over with our Travelers Claim representative, Rachel, in October was she talked about condo conversions being a trend that she saw happening in 2022 more and more, where developers come in and buy the whole building, and they start converting it to apartments from condos. And that's been basically generating a lot of claims. A lot of the homeowners they're trying to buy the condos from the homeowners below value, et cetera. And of course, if somebody's buying your building and they want to buy you out, that is upsetting to a lot of people. So that's one of the trends.
That's a very important trend as a result of Surfside. Surfside going down is brought about something called deconversions. Deconversions is something that will probably be in our trend for this year. For 2023, we put our trend, number one trend we're going to write down right now is deconversions. And because what's happening is this: if all of a sudden you realize that you're living in a community association has structural problems, structural issues, and it takes special assessment of $250,000, and again, you still live in the community association there, say Sherry, right?
HOA, yeah.
Yeah, you live in an HOA. Now all of a sudden somebody comes and says you need that kind of money, you don't have it. And most people don't have it. So if they're a vote to say, guess what, we'll convert it back to apartments, most people will say yes, but not all people. And that's
but not everybody, right?
Yes. If you have 10 and one person says no, you're talking about a major lawsuit. So deconversions will be the first trend for 2023. Glad you brought that up. So I write that one down.
Yeah, it's right. You're right. With if they can't afford to fix the building, with the reserves, or give somebody each homeowner a $10,000 assessment, special assessment, and they can't do it, they say, well, we're going to have to sell. I mean, that exactly. They have to do something.
Yeah, yeah. So
Great. Well,
okay,
great. Well, great. Well, that's fantastic. And thank you. We have some questions that have come in. If we have time to do a couple of questions here.
we did the good,
Let's,
the bad, and the ugly. Let's get some questions.
yes. And we have a question from Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah would like to know, she said, maybe carriers, hers is a comment, should start offering discounts on classes or training. She's saying carriers. That might be a way to get the boards to change their behavior and get educated. Just a thought.
You know what? We do a lot of training. I mean, we do a lot. I do a lot of webinars. Please, these webinars are for board. Also, we get a lot of board members that are attending these webinars. So, no, we do a lot of training with board of directors and management companies, and we agree. We again, the difference with us, we're committed to making a difference for community associations. We're not here just to get the premium and move on. We're here to educate so that we can make a difference, and that makes a difference for our organization.
Yes, and if you'd ever like to invite any board members that you know or property managers, feel free to invite them to our webinars. You can send me an email. My email is sherry.branson@amwins.com. Happy to sign them up for the webinars, the webinar list. This really, really helps them understand their liability and how much education they need and what their responsibilities are to protect themselves and protect the association as much as possible. So if they'd like
And
more
also,
education, they can invite them to our webinars as well.
it helps you out when it comes time to explain to them why your rates have gone up, why their
Exactly.
rates have increased. And that's
Right.
what these are all about. There's a reason why your rates have gone up. And this is
Yeah.
the reason.
Right. It's not a mystery like, oh, the rates went up. Well, why? It helps them understand it better and really understand the industry better. Great. And Trish Walsh, thank you for your question, Trish. She would like to know, would a D&O policy provide defense costs to a board that doesn't have a reserve study prepared and a building collapsed?
Oh, okay. Okay, that is the Surfside building when it came down, okay, was the biggest headache for insurance providers because most insurance would decline that because when you have deferred maintenance issues, it's not covered in the D&O or covered in the GL. Okay, so we don't pick up claims for deferred maintenance. Nobody. It's a maintenance. A D&O policy is or a liability policy is there in case of an accident, in case of an occurrence. Okay, if you have deferred maintenance, when did it occur? When did it happen? Now, building comes down, boom, you have date of occurrence. But deferred maintenance is not. D&O won't pick up the liability anyway. Now, let's say all of a sudden the building, we have a battle over the reserve account. You have a battle that we need a reserve study done. The board's not having a reserve study done. It's not funding the reserve. That could be covered under a D&O policy. Okay, because D&O is wrong. The board has done something wrong because they failed to fund the reserve, failed to have reserve study. Nothing happened, but we're challenging their authority to do their job correctly. So that is a D&O claim. That's what we see more than that's got a D&O claim we do see. Yes.
Okay. And now Sharon has a question. Sharon Heritage. Thank you, Sharon. She says our D&O liability insurance went from 3 million coverage for 13,000 premium to 1 million coverage for 22,000. Yet I find it difficult to get the board to focus on liability concerns. In other words, obeying local fire codes to get rid of patio barbecues. So that's a local fire code she's saying, where you can't have a barbecue on your patio, but the board won't do that. So they're not following the local fire codes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Instead, the board wants to focus on pickleball. Okay. Can you advise?
Yeah. Tell them that next year that rate will go with $500,000 for a lot more premium. Again, it's just a simple thing, okay? That the boards out there who recognize because of COVID, because of Surfside, that they have to do a better job. They have to be focused on what the job entails. They're the ones that we're looking at and going, okay, their rates won't go up that much, but it still will go up because the likelihood of them seeing a claim it's still really great because we know we live in a society where half the people are not going to like living in the gym. Because right now, the half the people don't want to talk about pickleball, want to talk about fire safety. The other half want to talk about pickleball. So you're going to see these kind of claims. And all you can do is let them know that because of the decisions they're making, their insurance rate will go up. And it'll keep going up higher and higher and higher until they get to a point where they are doing the thing they should be doing. You know, if you have a reserve study, let your insurance carrier know they have a reserve study. If it's a fully funded reserve, let your insurance carrier know, and you want to get a discount. And again, I'm not saying they'll get one or not, but you give them the information that allows them to say, okay, let me go back and instead of having a increase in premium, may I get that reduction that you need? Because you're showing that you are aware of the situation and you were trying to make things better.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also thinking if the board members are aware that there's local fire codes and they're not enforcing those fire codes, that could actually, be a problem for them if something happens, if something does happen.
And something will happen because again, if you're not worried about the fire codes, there's other things you're not worried about either. You're not worried about budgeting. You're not worried about the street signs. You're not worried about taking care of the maintenance of the cons. Again, that shows you a sign that they're not ready yet or not aware of what can possibly happen. You find one thing, there's other things in there too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Maybe they're not paying attention to a lot of things that could potentially turn into a big problem and a big claim and lawsuit, et cetera. Absolutely. Okay, and now we have a question from CJ Brophy. Thank you, CJ. Are you an advocate for tort reform?
Definitely. They're trying to do it in Florida right now. The problem is that how do you do it? I mean, how do you limit? And again, well, it's just hard. It's hard to do. I'm watching what they're doing in Florida to figure out will that work or not. But until it does, all we can do is one thing: is lay out the facts. Guess what, board? There's some great things you've done last year, but you have to be aware of things like bullying and harassment because right now you're going to see a lot of that. And what happens is that you don't do your job correctly, you will be sued, and you'll be sued for a lot of money because bullying and harassment and discrimination is all part of HUD that you're not allowed to do. And you don't have an anti-harassment discrimination policy, you're going to get nailed. You're going to get nailed. And all you got to do is have an anti-harassment discrimination policy. It'll save you a lot. But again, most associations don't have it and don't think there's a need for it.
Mm-hmm. That's why they should speak to their legal counsel to put one together.
Yes.
Put it together. Mm-hmm.
And if any lawyers on the phone over here right now, please make sure you let everybody know to have an anti-harassment discrimination policy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Very important. Great advice. And Joe Emlani, he'd like to know if the presentation is available to be emailed to you. Yes, it is. Please send me an email, Joe, to sherry.branson@amwins.com. Thank you, Joe. And we have a couple more questions. Do you have time, Kevin, for a couple more?
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. Great. We have an anonymous question here. Is there a webinar available for board members to discuss how to choose and work with a property manager? I've seen many issues related to reporting claims, among other issues. There is a breakdown in communication between board members and property managers on many issues.
Okay, this is what you need to do. There's a trade association called Community Association Institute, CAI, Community Association Institute, that has all the information you can need on those areas. So look it up, Google them, and they'll have all types of information, webinars and everything.
Mm-hmm. See, there's always a CAI chapter in every major city in every state. There's I'm in near Orlando. There's CAI Orlando, there's CAI Los Angeles. So whatever state you're in, just Google CAI and your local chapter should come up. And they have great luncheons, they have speakers. You can get all kinds of great information there and great resources and tools. Great. And now for Jess has a question. For Florida HOA book of business, how should we deal with incredibly high property rates after the hurricanes Ian and Nicole?
Well, if I knew the answer to that, I can't help you on that at all. I mean, again, it is. I today was mostly about liability. I'm scared of the property side because we didn't even talk about climate change. And Sarah and I mentioned climate change earlier, and we kind of left that one alone because that is, again, I mean, property in Florida it's a nightmare. But property in a lot of places could be a nightmare too. Like in California, we had fires all last year. Now it's all flooded out. and in 6 months you're gonna have landslides because of all that. I mean, it
Brush
was
fires, and then the brush fires are coming too for California. So that,
so right now in Texas, you have all the ice, and but right now at least they have electricity. Last year they didn't have electricity, so right now the property exposure is going to get, to me, a lot tougher. Also, look, from an insurance point of view, it's ugly, and that's why we said the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's some good stuff, the
there's
bad,
some ugly, and there's some ugly stuff. Yeah.
and the ugly stuff is the insurance, because I don't know. I mean, there's so much stuff we don't know. So
Yeah.
it's ugly. We just don't know. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's something. If you're in an area that has natural catastrophes, the rates are unfortunately going to go up. And it's and somebody's asking for the email, my email again. Sure, it's Sherry, SHERRY .Branson, BRANSON @amwins.com. Sherry.Branson @amwins.com. And if you think of any other questions after today's webinar, feel free to email me your question. I'm happy to give you a call. Kevin or I will give you a call, or we'll email you back and answer your questions. And thank you for your great questions today. Thank you for a great webinar, Kevin. And I did want to mention, if anybody has any ideas for topics that you'd like us to cover this year in 2023, since it's a new year, we'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear from you. So send me an email, think, hey, you haven't done a webinar about this topic, and I really want to learn more about this. Feel free to make suggestions, send me an email. My phone number, I'm not going to give out my cell phone now, but you can email me and I'll call you back. And if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, a couple people have asked for the PowerPoint presentation, please send me an email and I can send you a copy of the PowerPoint. And I'll give out our website one more time where you can listen to the recording. It's kdisonline.com.
okay, Sherry, thanks.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much for a great webinar. And
Yep.
Thanks, everybody. Happy New Year, a little bit late. And have a great afternoon, and we'll see you soon.
All right, take care.
Take care.